She gripped the edge of his cart with trembling fingers, her voice barely louder than the mall's hum. "Daddy!" And in that instant, everything he had buried came rushing back. Jonathan Hale was a man people noticed without knowing why. It wasn't just the tailored charcoal suit, or the understated watch worth more than most cars. It was the way he moved. Controlled, measured, as though the air itself stepped aside for him. Yet beneath the surface of that practiced calm lived a silence so heavy it could smother a room. On a Wednesday afternoon, that silence was broken in the middle of a downtown shopping mall. He had been choosing cufflinks, the same habit every time a new deal closed, when a voice behind him made the world tilt. "Jonathan, doesn't she look like Emily?" It was Margaret's voice, lilting with curiosity, but carrying an undercurrent of something more. She was his fiancée, beautiful, poised, perfectly in step with the world of wealth he inhabited. She stood a step behind him, her eyes locked on a young woman at the other end of the store. Jonathan turned, and the cufflink case fogged slightly under his breath. The girl was at the counter paying for something small. Dark hair pulled back in a loose braid, jacket 2 sizes too big. The overhead light caught her profile, the sharp nose, the defined jawline, but it was the eyes that stopped him cold. They were the same shade of clear, startling blue he had seen every morning in the framed photograph on his desk for the last 16 years. Emily's eyes. The rest of the store seemed to dim around him. The young woman turned slightly, thanking the cashier. She tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, the same unconscious gesture Emily used to make when she was reading. Jonathan's fingers curled against the glass counter. His heart was steady, but every beat felt like it was cracking something open inside him. "Jonathan?" Margaret's voice was careful now, as though she had already realized she'd stepped onto dangerous ground. "It's uncanny, isn't it?" He swallowed once hard. "It's not possible." But his voice lacked conviction. Outside, the winter air hit him like a slap. The girl was walking ahead of them, her boots scuffing the pavement. Margaret's heels clicked beside him, but she didn't speak. Jonathan followed without fully deciding to. He kept his distance, watching the way the girl's shoulders hunched against the cold. She stopped at a bus stop, digging into her bag. When the bus pulled up, she boarded without glancing back. The doors closed, and Jonathan's hand twitched toward them before he forced it back down. Margaret touched his arm. She could be a coincidence. He looked at her. Really looked. And if she's not? That night, Jonathan sat in his study long after the house had gone quiet. The photograph of Emily, age 7, missing her front teeth, sunlight tangled in her hair, sat on the desk. He traced the edges of the frame, his thumb catching on the small crack in the glass. He remembered the day she disappeared with the kind of clarity that burned. One moment she was in the garden, chasing a butterfly. The next, there was only the sound of the wind in the hedge. Search parties, police reports, leads that evaporated like mist, and then eventually the silence. Now, after all these years, a stranger's face had reopened everything he had fought to seal away. The next morning, Jonathan was in the city earlier than usual. He told his driver to circle near the same bus route. It didn't take long before he spotted her, same braid, same too-big jacket, earbuds in as she walked toward a small coffee shop. He stepped inside just as she was paying. Up close, she looked younger than he'd thought, early 20s maybe. Her eyes flicked to him briefly, polite but guarded, before she turned to leave. Jonathan found himself following her outside. "Excuse me," he said. She stopped, wary. "Yes? I think I might know someone you're related to." Her brow furrowed. "I doubt it." He reached into his wallet, pulling out a business card. "If you ever want to talk, call me." She took the card like it was a foreign object, glanced at it, then slipped it into her pocket without a word. As she walked away, Jonathan felt the weight of both hope and dread settle in his chest. That evening, Margaret confronted him in the kitchen. "Jonathan, what are you doing?" "What I should have done years ago," he replied. "And what if you're wrong?" He met her gaze. "Then I'll know, and that will be the end of it." But deep down, he knew it wouldn't be that simple. If you were Jonathan, Would you chase the resemblance or protect yourself from reopening old wounds? Share your thoughts in the comments. Someone might be facing the same question right now. 2 days later, the phone rang in Jonathan's study. "Mr. Hale." The voice was soft, hesitant. "Yes." "This is the girl you met at the coffee shop." Jonathan sat straighter. "Thank you for calling." A pause. "You said you might know someone I'm related to." "I did." "Can we talk? Somewhere public?" He agreed instantly, naming a cafe on the quieter side of town. She arrived before him. Seated at a corner table with a cup of tea she didn't seem to be drinking. Jonathan slid into the seat opposite her, studying the guarded expression in her eyes. "My name's Lila," she said, voice flat. "Jonathan." "I know who you are," she said, one eyebrow lifting. "People talk." He let the comment pass. "Lila, may I ask where you're from?" She gave a small shrug. "Here and there. Grew up in foster care. A couple of placements, none worth remembering." His fingers tightened on his coffee cup. "And your parents?" "Don't know them. Never met them. Don't care to." There was an edge in her voice, brittle and sharp, that told him she cared more than she'd ever admit. Jonathan reached into his jacket and pulled out the photograph of Emily. "Lila, this was my daughter." Her gaze flicked to the picture, then away again. "She's pretty. She disappeared 16 years ago. You look—" His throat caught. "You look exactly like her." Lila leaned back, arms crossed. "So what? People have doppelgangers." "I'm not saying you are her, but I'd like to know for sure. A DNA test?" "No." The refusal was immediate. "Why?" he asked quietly. "Because," she said, pushing back her chair. "People like you only want answers for themselves. I've been someone else's question mark before. It's not fun." She left without finishing her tea, but she didn't tear up his card. Jonathan watched her go, a knot in his chest tightening. The next week, fate, or something like it, intervened. Jonathan's car was stuck behind an accident downtown. As the driver maneuvered through the mess, Jonathan spotted Lila standing on the sidewalk in the rain, no umbrella soaked through. He rolled down the window. "Get in." She hesitated, then ducked into the car, dripping onto the leather seats. "Where were you headed?" he asked. "Nowhere that can't wait," she said, rubbing her arms for warmth. "You can dry off at my office." It wasn't a suggestion. The office was warm, lined with dark wood and the faint smell of coffee. He handed her a towel and a blanket from a cupboard. She accepted them wordlessly, her eyes roaming the room, lingering briefly on the framed photo of Emily on the desk. "You keep her close," she murmured. "Always," he replied. She didn't look at him when she said, "That must have been hard. Losing her." Jonathan swallowed. "Harder than anything I've ever done." For a moment something in her expression softened, the guarded mask slipping. But then she pulled the blanket tighter and looked away. In the days that followed, their paths crossed again, sometimes by chance, sometimes because Jonathan arranged it without saying so. Slowly, her sarcasm became less barbed. She asked questions about his work, his travels. He learned she worked part-time at a bookstore and took night classes in art history. Still, whenever he approached the subject of the past, she shut down. One evening, Margaret confronted him again, this time with real anger. "Jonathan, this is becoming an obsession. I need to know," he said simply. "And what about me? What about our life? You're dragging a stranger into our world." "She's not a stranger." Margaret stared at him, and in her silence was a kind of answer neither of them wanted to face. "Have you ever felt torn between protecting the life you've built and chasing a truth that could destroy it? Which would you choose?" It happened on a Thursday evening without warning. Jonathan was at home when his phone rang. The number was unfamiliar. "Mr. Hale?" It was Lila, her voice shaking. I need help." "Where are you?" She gave him an address on the outskirts of the city. He was there in 20 minutes. The neighborhood was rough, flickering streetlights, cracked pavement. Lila sat on the curb outside a rundown apartment building, clutching a battered duffel bag. Her eyes were red, her hands trembling. "What happened?" Jonathan asked, crouching beside her. My roommate. She's in trouble. Some guy she owed money to came by. I told him to leave her alone and he... She stopped, shaking her head. I'm not going back in there. Then you won't, Jonathan said, standing. Come on. She didn't argue. At his home, she stayed in the guest room. The first night, he heard her pacing long after midnight. On the third night, she appeared in his study, hovering in the doorway. I looked her up, she said suddenly. Your daughter, Emily. Jonathan set down his pen. She went missing in 2009. You never found her. That's right. Lila's voice was quiet. When I was a kid, one of my foster moms, she told me once I wasn't really hers, said I'd been found wandering near a bus station when I was 4. I never thought much about it. Jonathan's heart pounded. Lila, I'm not saying it means anything, maybe I don't want to wonder anymore. The DNA test took a week. Each day was an exercise in restraint. Jonathan tried not to hope, but the hope came anyway, uninvited. Lila kept her distance, though she shared small pieces of her life, how she liked black coffee but hated tea, how she drew in the margins of her notebooks, how she never celebrated birthdays. Margaret, sensing the shift, spent more time away. Jonathan noticed but didn't chase after her. The results came in on a rainy Tuesday. Jonathan sat at his desk, the envelope before him. Lila was across from him, hands clenched in her lap. He opened it slowly, read once, twice. A breath left him like it had been trapped for 16 years. It's you, he whispered. Lila. You're Emily. She didn't speak at first. Her eyes brimmed, and then she shook her head. I don't know how to be her. You don't have to, Jonathan said, his voice breaking. Just be you, that's all I ever wanted. But reunion didn't erase the years apart. There were awkward silences, clumsy attempts at connection. Some nights she would disappear for hours, returning with reddened eyes. Jonathan learned not to push too hard. Then came the shatter point. Margaret arrived one evening unannounced to collect the last of her things. She saw Lila in the kitchen, wearing one of Jonathan's old sweaters, barefoot, laughing at something on her phone. Later, Margaret cornered Jonathan in the hall. This is what you've chosen? She demanded. A replacement daughter to fill the hole? Jonathan's jaw tightened. She's not a replacement, she's my daughter. Margaret's voice dripped with hurt. And what about me? He met her eyes. I hope you find someone who makes you feel as whole as she makes me feel. She left without another word. In the weeks that followed, Lila withdrew. I don't want to ruin your life, she told him one night, eyes shadowed. You're not ruining anything, he said, but she shook her head. You lost so much because of me. I don't know how to make up for that. You don't have to. Just let me be here now. One evening, Jonathan came home to find a note on the kitchen counter. Need to clear my head. Back soon. Hours passed. Rain started. By midnight, he was driving the streets, searching. He found her at the old bus station, sitting on a bench, staring into the dark. Why here? He asked gently, sitting beside her. This is where they found me, she said. I thought maybe if I sat here long enough, I'd remember something. But all I remember is feeling alone. You're not alone anymore, he said. Her hand found his, tentative, but real. From then on, the distance between them began to close. Slowly they built routines, breakfast together on Sundays, late-night talks over tea. He learned to make it how she liked, even though she claimed to hate it. He attended one of her art exhibitions at the community college, and she came to one of his business dinners, introducing herself simply as Jonathan's daughter. The past would always be there, but it no longer defined them entirely. On the anniversary of her disappearance, they visited the old garden where she'd last been seen. Lila stood among the overgrown hedges, a faint smile on her lips. It's strange, she said. I don't remember it, but I feel like I belong here. Jonathan slipped an arm around her shoulders. You belong with me. That night, as they sat on the porch watching the sun sink behind the trees, Lila leaned her head on his shoulder. You know, she murmured, When I first met you, I thought you were just some rich guy looking for a story. And now, he asked, now I know you were just a dad looking for his daughter. Jonathan's throat tightened. And I found her. Do you believe lost connections, whether family or love, can truly be rebuilt after so many years? Or do they always become something new?